video is dedicated to anyone who says FIRE is not achievable for insert reason here. I have debt. Yeah? Jillian and her husband had more than $55,000 in debt. What's your next excuse? I have a large family. Yeah? Jillian has 6 kids. I grew up with no advantages. Jillian moved out of her house at age 17, going to high school while also supporting herself by working 20 to 30 hours a week. Jillian did it, and you can do it too. So Jillian, thank you so much for being here today. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Me too. Thank you for having me.
Jillian, how did you go from living on your own your senior year of high school to discovering financial independence? That seems like a giant leap.
It was a giant leap, and honestly, it probably would have been a leap too far. I think when you're in that spot, it's so hard to imagine getting there that even if I could travel back in time and tell myself, hey, this is what we're going to do, it's going to be amazing, you're going to be 5 by 32, I think even me talking to me would be like, yeah, that's BS. Next, please. It doesn't at all seem in the realm of possibility. So we started with kind of just the first step. I knew I wanted to get out of debt. I knew because of some experiences in my childhood, I knew money gave me options, and I desperately wanted those options. So first thing was pay off our debt. But right after me and my husband got married, someone at our church, I think, in a very offhanded way, said, hey, after you guys get married, you've been living on you've each been living on one salary. What if you just saved half? And then, if you guys decide to have kids, that would help pay for childcare, someone could stay home. And I thought, well, that sounds smart. I like the sound of that. Yes, please. And so at 19, married with all of this debt, I thought, okay, let's just save half. Now, granted, I was making $8 an hour. I think the first year we made $12,000. So saving half also seemed a little crazy, but it was that kind of first step into the FI community, which wasn't a thing back then. This was a long time ago.
I love that somebody suggested that you save half. And even though you're making $8 an hour, you're like, oh, okay, we'll do that. So back up to the beginning, I should have added that too. I don't make a lot of money. Yeah, Jillian was making $8 an hour. So please don't throw any more excuses at me because they're invalid.
Yeah, we actually never, as a couple, we never had $100,000 income.
Wait, you can't become financially independent if you don't make 6 figures.
Some would say, yeah.
Yeah, some would say. Lots of people would say. I love every part of your story. One thing, Jillian, that you have done that I absolutely love is this concept of mini retirements. Why do mini retirements feel like a better fit for you than full-on retiring and never doing anything again?
Well, initially, like I said, when we started, we weren't making a lot of money. My first super ambitious dream was to be able to retire at 60. That felt impossible, but amazing to have kind of that financial freedom. So that was my first kind of stretch goal, was 60. So I never imagined we could be FI earlier than that. So I thought the only way we're going to be able to lean into these seasons of life with expiration dates or do all of these cool dreams we have is if we take mini retirements. And so that was something I could wrap my mind around, and that felt financially accessible and possible. So that's kind of what we started with.
So what does mini retirement mean to you?
I classify it as any time, 3 points, you take a month or longer, stepping away from your 9 to 5 to focus on something that matters to you.
I love that. Oh, I love that so much. So you were recently on a big road trip. Would you consider that to be a mini retirement?
Yes, I think mini retirement also has, like I said, focusing on something that matters to you. It has that intention. So it's a little bit different than if you get laid off and you're like, oh, I'm bummed and depressed and I'm going to binge Netflix and eat chips on my couch for a month. You don't quite hit that third point of the mini retirement. But yeah, this 6-month trip was really good for all of us.
So what kind of changes did you have to make in order to be able to fit mini retirements into your schedule?
For us initially, because we were in this aggressively trying to pay off debt, trying to save an emergency fund, trying to start investing. In the beginning, it was just being open to those opportunities. Like if you aren't very far along in your financial journey, you just kind of have to wait for life to present an opportunity. And for me, the first opportunity came through kind of tragedy. I had a miscarriage and I was a mess. Like some people have miscarriages and it's a little blip in their life and they move on and it's like fine. It was not fine. I was not fine. And my employer was like, yeah, you need to go figure this out because this is not going well. And I'm like, yeah, it's not going well. And they gave me a month off, paid. And I said, yeah, I'm just going to take this opportunity. And me and my best friend did a coast-to-coast road trip. We drove DC to Seattle and back over this month. And it was like exactly what my heart and my soul needed. It was just like the mountains and the ocean and the plains and lots of time in my Honda Civic.
Wow, a road trip in a Honda Civic.
Yes, camping, road trip, sleeping on people's couches. Because I've always been a little bit of numbers geeky. I tracked all of our expenses during it in a little notebook. And I paid for the whole thing. And I think it was like $2,300. So, if you're early in your time, like find those opportunities, but it also doesn't have to be massively expensive. Now that we're further along in our journey, our road trips are a lot more expensive, but you kind of start with what you can do.
That is an excellent point. You start with what you can do. I read this really great quote that said, don't compare the beginning of your journey to the middle or end of my journey. You now take, I would not categorize them as extravagant road trips, but they are more extravagant than your $2,300 Honda Civic road trip. You now take different road trips because you're in a different position, but you started with what you could afford. And $2,300 for an entire month plus gas plus coast to coast road trip, that's really awesome.
And the great thing is, leaning into that season of life, that is one of my most special mini retirements. And part of it is like, that is legitimately never going to happen again. One, I don't sleep on the frozen ground anymore. Like I have passed that season of my life. I don't sleep in tents anymore. I don't sleep on people's couches anymore. Like all those things that I loved at 24, I'm different. So I'm so glad that we did that when we did. And I could like fully embrace that season of life. And so if you're kind of earlier in your financial, freedom progress, there might be things that like lean into the things you want to do now because you might not enjoy them as much when you're 40 or 50 or 60.
As somebody who has also passed the camping season of my life, I completely agree. So you have never made six figures during your marriage. How does your financial independence journey differ from somebody who does make six figures?
So I think there's actually some advantages to being a lower income earner. And part of it is mindset. There are things that when you earn $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 don't seem worth it. Like the juice isn't worth the squeeze. So there were things that we could optimize for and really lean into some frugality habits that, if you're making $250, like probably isn't worth it. Like it's probably kind of a waste of your time. And walking away from careers when you earn $30,000 a year isn't as scary. It's not as hard. Like now I do a lot of coaching for people who, are typically higher income earners and they're thinking about taking sabbaticals. And it's tough. It's tough to walk away from a big paycheck. And there's this psychological barrier of, what if I can't get another job that pays me as well? But listen, when you're making like $15 an hour, you can find another job that pays you $15 an hour. That was never a concern for us. And so we really learned like these foundational frugal things because it did make a difference. And there was like a payoff to learning how to cook affordably, to, when we lived in DC, we had a housemate. And I remember telling all of my friends like, oh my gosh, this is such a great hack. Like we're saving so much money. And they're like, yeah, no thanks. Like, that doesn't sound appealing at all. But because it made such a huge difference in our finances, like, it was appealing. Like, you have the motivation to make kind of those optimizations.
Yeah, I was going to make that point. If you have a $250,000 a year job, and back then there were even fewer, but there's not that many $250,000 a year jobs compared to how many $15 an hour jobs there are. So it's very easy to go back and get another job. You said you were optimizing and you were incorporating frugal habits. What was it that you were optimizing, and what frugal habits did you incorporate into your lifestyle?
So one thing that I kind of started with naturally, and then I read it in a book and it really resonated. It was talking about how to cook more affordably based on just using more affordable ingredients. And so his rule was like $1 a pound. And I was like, that's a great rule. So instead of using coupons or stressing about how to bring my grocery bill down, I just learned how to cook a whole bunch of meals that primarily use affordable ingredients. And then you don't have to like shop sales and do all of this. And like, it doesn't take a lot of mental energy. And I always encourage people, if you're just starting, like, find one meal that kind of fits your taste, that is like convenient for you to make, that you enjoy, that you feel like is healthy for your body, that uses, now inflation has been a little crazy, so like $2 a pound ingredients, but is 80% of these more affordable things. And you can slowly build that out until you have 10 or 20 of these recipes that naturally just feels easy and convenient, and it ends up being super affordable.
You mentioned the word investing, and one of the things that people in the FI community promote heavily is investing in the stock market, in real estate, in specific stocks, in index funds. What is your investment strategy? And what was your investment strategy while you were pursuing financial independence?
Well, now my investment strategy is very normal. Like, we have 2 rentals, we've got index funds, we've got retirement accounts, we've got brokerage, like all the normal things. But starting to invest was very difficult. Growing up, no one in my family invested. We just weren't in that place financially. And it felt so risky. It felt like gambling. And I think when you have, like, I had this tremendous fear around money, this scarcity around money, the idea of losing money was so painful and was so like emotionally triggering. And I didn't have any knowledge. So I started reading, I started going to the library. Where I grew up, we didn't really have a library. But once we moved to DC, there were libraries. So I'd go and I'd read all these nonfiction books. I started reading a book every week. And so I'd read enough books about money, and I read enough books about investing that, like, I at least theoretically knew what I was getting into. But there was a lot of missteps. I remember when we first decided to set up an IRA, I sent my husband to Bank of America, which is where we banked, to set up our IRA. And I don't think I gave him enough information. And so he came back and he said, okay, I set it up. And I was like, cool, what did you invest in? And he goes, I'm not sure, but it has like a 5% guaranteed return. And I was like, I don't think you can guarantee a stock return. Can I see the paperwork? Like, what is it? He had bought a CD in our IRA. And I was like, he's like, well, the guy had me fill out, like, if I wanted to, like, lose a bunch of money. And I said, no. And so this is what he recommended. And I was like, yeah, I don't know if that's the best, like, option for, like, our long-term investing. It's just CDs. So, like, can you go switch that? But it was tough. So we started investing. We started maxing out our Roth IRA. But we finally paid off our debt and was, like, making more progress. I started really investing, but it was like 2007, 2008. And that money dropped in half. And honestly, I wanted to vomit like every day. It was terrifying. It was terrifying to go through that. And I had read all the books. I had read all the things like, it's okay. This is okay. It's on sale. Like, we're going to be okay. But it was that first, I think for most people, when you go through that first big drop, it's really tough. This was about the time we decided to go to Germany. We had saved up a bunch of cash to buy a house. And we said, well, we're going to be in Germany, so we'll just push that into the market. And every week I would invest like another $10,000. Every week I would see it evaporate. And it was an emotionally difficult time.
So I think it's important to point out here that this is a completely normal thought process. Oh my goodness, what am I doing? What is not completely, and from like educated investors, experienced investors, people who are comfortable with the stock market and theoretically realize that the stock market goes up and then maybe comes down a little bit and goes up and maybe comes down a little bit. And even on episode 119 of the BiggerPockets Money podcast, where we talked to Brandon, the mad scientist, he was talking about during COVID when the market plummeted on like over the course of like 2 weeks or something. He had in his mind an investment strategy, and he's been investing for years. You had just started and all of a sudden you're like 50% loss. What? You don't consider that to be like 50% off. You look at that as 50% loss. That is absolutely a glass half empty scenario. And there's for people who say that the market's on sale, and I've said that too, but that's great. That's great in theory. But when it's actually dropping, it is very heartbreaking. It's different to look at that now when we're in, one of those like little bitty movement time periods versus 2007, 2008, when we are in a almost free fall and every day there's another story about how bad the market is. To be able to watch, I put money in and now it's worth less. I put money in and now it's worth less, and continue to put money in is so impressive.
Yeah. People sometimes ask like, what were like the big tipping points in our financial journey? And honestly, our greatest advantage were all the things that went wrong. The stock market crashing in 2008, that was one of the biggest advantages. We came back. We had thought about buying a house in 2007 in DC. Oh my gosh. But we kept getting outpriced. We were saving money. Every month. The housing market was going up and up and up. And I remember I even called into like a financial show and I said, I'm distraught. I'm beside myself. I'm saving so much money. I'm doing everything right. And every month it's going up 5%. Like, what do I do? And they're like, yeah, it's really tough. Like, sorry. But we come back and not only has the housing market crashed, but all of the investors who were like, buy in 2009 and 2010 and 2011, people were starting to run out of cash. Because they had spent all their cash on acquiring so many properties, and now things were sitting a lot longer. And we had all of this cash from investing in 2008. And so over a course of 2.5 years, we bought 3 houses. We could have bought one very nice house. We bought 3 kind of crappy houses and fixed them up.
And now they're worth significantly more than what you bought them for and the repairs that you made.
I think back to all those conversations when I was living in DC and I was telling everyone, oh my gosh, like you could get a roommate and this is amazing. And look how much money you can save. And they're like, whatever. That one choice helped create about $25,000. Coming back from Germany, that was about $50,000. That was the reason we could buy that first rental, because we had that extra $50,000. That first rental was the reason we could buy our second rental, because it created so much income. Those 2 rentals have, I would say, $700,000 of equity in them, because of that one choice that everyone thought was stupid.
Yes. Do what nobody does now so you can live like nobody else is now so you can live like nobody else later. And now all those people that you knew in DC who could never have a roommate are still working, right?
Yeah.
I'm still working. That doesn't mean that still working is bad, but I have the option to not work. They probably don't have the option to not work or to work part-time or to take a job that is a passion job, not a payment job, because there are lots of passion jobs like forest ranger. They don't make anything. They don't have to make anything because there's so many people who want to do it because it's such a cool job. Well, when it comes to putting food on the table for 6 kids, and how many of those 6 kids are boys?
Oh, let's see. We've got, what are we at? 8, 11, 12, 15, 16 right now at home. So we're creeping into all teenagers.
Teenage boys can eat.
4 of my children started wearing deodorant in the last year. It's been a fun year around here. We're going through
Well, congratulations on your monumental success. So, Jillian, you have a very fascinating story that goes against pretty much all of the norms of somebody who is pursuing financial independence. No high-paying job, no small family or no kids. You have 6 kids. You started off with debt. You weren't making a ton of money. What is your best piece of advice for people who are just starting out on their own financial journey without all of these advantages that some of these other people may have?
You know, when you were saying my intro, like growing up without advantages, I never look at it that way. I never think about, oh, I didn't have the advantages other people had. We just had different advantages. And I think you really have to lean into what your advantages were. I had amazing teachers in high school. I grew up in an amazing community of like insanely hardworking people. I joke that I have never worked hard a day in my life because I grew up in a farming and ranching community where it's like 40 below and they get up at 4 in the morning and ride a horse through a snowstorm looking for calves that are being born because for some reason they always want to be born during a snowstorm. I have not done that. I will never do that. I don't like being out in 40 below and I'm not going to be out on a horse in a snowstorm. Like these people would work 16, 18 hours a day harvesting in like 110-degree heat with no air conditioning and just like wheat chaff stuck to their entire body to where they look like a zombie. Yeah, I sit in my office, in my air-conditioned office, and I like type on a computer and write books. And people are like, oh, it's so hard that you write books. No, it is not hard. These are not hard things. Having a roommate is not a hard thing. Coming up with tasty meals that are affordable is not a hard thing. Camping so I could see 27 countries is not a hard thing. Like these were huge advantages for me. And so leaning into what is your advantage? How can you do things in a way that other people can't? Because everyone has challenges. I had someone, of course, a comment online. On my podcast, I interviewed a CEO about his mini retirement. And someone commented, well, I'm sure it must be easy for him. Like, of course you can take a mini retirement if you're a CEO. And I thought, dude, have you ever met CEOs? Like, how many CEOs do you hang out with? It is not easy to take a mini retirement when you're a CEO. It's not a financial challenge, but there's all these other challenges. And so I think leaning into what are my advantages and how do I leverage that?
I love that so much, Jillian. Thank you for joining me today. This was so much fun. It's always good to talk to you. And please remind people where they can find you online.
On social media, I'm at Jillian Johnsrud. And my website, my new website is Retire Often to coincide with the podcast and the book that'll be coming out next year.
I love that. Retire often. Yeah, retire early, retire often. I'm from Chicago and we have a bit of a different take on that phrase. It's vote early, vote often. All right. Thank you, Jillian. You are so awesome. You're such an inspiration to anybody who is feeling like maybe they don't fit into the fire community. On paper, you don't fit into the fire community mold, but in reality, you are everything that embodies the fire community.
Thanks so much for having me.
If you like this video, please click the thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more inspiring fire videos just like Jillian's. This is Mindy Jensen signing off.